Jeremy Brown spent 20 years serving our country in special operations for the U.S. Army, where he specialized in unconventional warfare, which is probably one of the reasons why the FBI came to his home and tried to recruit him to be a part of their January 6th false flag against peaceful American protesters. After going public with video evidence of the FBI visit, Jeremy Brown was arrested on trumped-up charges and sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. I recently interviewed Jeremy about his new podcast, Fusion Cell. Here are the highlights.
Everybody knows something's going on. There's just some of us who have a much better knowledge of what's going on than others. But, the reality is that America is an occupied country. Our savior is not going to be somebody who's popular, who's rich, who is successful in the ways of the world right now, whether it's Elon Musk or whether it's Donald Trump. A politician is not going to save us. We need to start realizing that we are the answer to these problems. In essence, America has become a nation of cowards who will only tell you what they believe if they can get 3 forms of verification that you agree with them. And this is not the country that our founders established, and it certainly isn't the way they established it. And until we start to stand up for our own beliefs and principles and not rely on these manufactured heroes, these superheroes that are given to us by the media, well, then we're never going to fix the problem. Tyranny is not coming. It is already here. AI is just simply another weapon in the toolbox of those who seek to control the world. And that's all it is. I mean, the reality is that they want way fewer of us, but they know that they like all the things that we contribute to the world, and so they have to have some type of replacement, and AI is one of those replacements. And they've told us that this is what they want through the dystopic pre-programming of Minority Report.
In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. In the time of censorship, non-compliance is key. From an undisclosed location in FEMA Region 10, it's your host, Joshua Michael.
Welcome, folks, ladies and gentlemen. It is, what is days today?
23rd.
Well, it's not going to be the 23rd when you hear this.
This is
June 23rd. We're precasting and preloading on our show. Welcome. There's a lot of information always going around. And as we mentioned last week, we were talking about some of the Vault 7 stuff, the upcoming cybersecurity nonsense that the media is hyping up in every element. We kind of wanted to do a deep dive today and talk about what cybersecurity is, what the state of the world is, what is really going on around the world between all these countries, and just a lot of kind of sifting out of the information that we see. There's a lot of fear tactics going on. There's aliens landing in Las Vegas now, and that just seems to be a norm that everybody's accepting, as well as just the upcoming cyber threat that we've been warning about. Steve Quayle's talking about it. A lot of people are mentioning things going on. They're trying to pre-program the population to accept it, to go along with the green energy power grid scenarios that they're going to be trying to disrupt. And we're seeing that in different elements, and all the elements of deindustrializing the country and getting us into a position to where we will not be able to do anything but be at the mercy of these global conglomerates. But we have Don Powers in the house, as always. How you doing, Don?
I am doing great. And I tell you, I am so excited for our guest today.
Yeah, we do have a guest, and you helped put this together. This is could you do an introduction to her?
I will.
And her background.
One of my favorite people in the cyber security world, the elections world, a very well known person in that, personality in that, a great mind, and most importantly, one of the best people that you can know. My good friend Draza Smith is with us today, and she's going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to go back on what you were talking. We're going to go back in history just a little bit and talk about things called the shadow brokers and how that relates to National Security Agency and some of these ransomware attacks that went on, these stuff years ago, and how that has all been evolving into some of the stuff we're seeing today. So, Draza, so glad you could make the time to meet with us today.
What an intro. Thank you so much. And I am honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So yeah, let's go through a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you can disclose as far as kind of giving a backstory about yourself.
Backstory of myself. So I'm an electrical engineer by trade. I've worked in the power industry and worked on generation and controls. And I guess used all of that engineering information that I had to start looking at election data, and I think that's what, if anybody does know me, that's what they know me for. That I'm looking at the election data and showing analytical similarities between different areas that should not have been there, and we still don't have good answers or admitted answers as to why these were happening.
Right. So, and a lot of that with the election stuff kind of going back, is it specific to 2020, or have you guys looked back prior to 2020? How much data did you look at, or have you looked at, or do you continue to look at?
So there's some very, very interesting things that we've been able to see with the data that was collected from the 2020 election, the 2022 elections as well. So the data from prior elections was very difficult to get a hold of because it's allowed to be destroyed, and a lot of the data we walk a fine line. I'm not a huge fan of the current commercial off-the-shelf technology that's used for the election systems. I think that they have their own variety of problems, but they do collect an awful lot of data that can be analyzed in a digital format that was not available to go back to elections prior to those being in place. So it's very difficult to have the same kind of data at a detailed level to compare with prior to having the machines, after having the machines, and see what actually changed in the voting minutia of the different populations.
Absolutely. But now, I guess, since 2020, we'll have a good track record because everybody's compiling this data. They'll have the ability to kind of reference back from 2020 of what progresses into 24 and 26. God willing, we can even make it to 28. With the state of the world and everything going on, it's some really volatile times. And the reason we wanted to have you on is to kind of dive into some of this stuff. Yes, I want to talk about the election stuff. I want to talk more about your experience and your background, and your kind of dissecting into these technological things that are going on that we're seeing, and you having your power industry background. Did you do any specific work, in the power grid scenario, in the electrical engineering when you talk about that? Could you give us some insight as far as, we always hear about the vulnerability of the power grid, right? The power grid's so vulnerable. It's so vulnerable in the United States. At any moment, the power grid's going to go out. This is all the fear tactics that we're hearing all the time. Is there any validity to that? Do you have a background in that, or is it more in other specialized elements? That
I do have a background in that. It's something I believe personally, that you can't have anybody working in the power industry and a lot of other industries anymore, that if you're working in that controls or electronics kind of environment, you have to become more of an expert in cybersecurity as well. Anytime anything now has communication and it's interlinked with each other, you have to design in the cybersecurity aspects as just another safety system.
Absolutely.
You don't want to put a system online without fire protection. You don't want to put a system online without cyber protection. It's just become that much ingrained in our technologies in general.
It's just putting a gasket on a hose. It's just something that you do. It's something you have to learn.
You have to do.
Yep. We understand that. Okay. So in that, you obviously got to get into, cybersecurity. Is that your forte? Is that your specialty? Or is it more just analytics, or it's just kind of,
I would consider myself kind of all of the above. Maybe not as good in all aspects as some individuals may be in their own, but more of a global systems evaluator. And
Awesome.
And yeah, so when I've looked at the power system from a cyber perspective, I always do try to have a good enough understanding of the systems in general that I can play a devil's advocate and say, well, what if this happened? What if this happened? What if this happened? And try to use that to build systems that are more resilient. There's been a big push to improve the security and the resiliency of the grid, and I think that there's an awful lot of fantastic minds in the United States working on that problem. But we have the other problem is that the grid itself lends itself to being insecure in the fact that we build things like bridges and electrical infrastructures that are very expensive, that take some of the taxpayers' money from all of us, and we put it together and we build it to last, right? And how often do you get patches on your PC? Well, some of this equipment that we put in place wasn't designed to be upgraded or modified or anything, and they didn't envision what's going on now 20 years ago when the equipment was actually installed. So we want everything to be very, very long-lived, but at the same time, when you have equipment that does have any kind of electronics or intelligence, the longer lived it is, the more cyber flaws can be discovered. So it's a very interesting catch-22 in an environment like that.
It makes me think of Eternal Blue, right? When we think about Eternal Blue, that whole system and everything that came from that.
So what is Eternal Blue for the people that don't know in the audience? Could you explain that?
Yeah, I was going to lead that into to Draza and let her go on it. But basically, it was a bunch of critical vulnerabilities within Microsoft. And the interesting thing was, it came out, and once they knew that there was this vulnerability, it didn't matter, because within just a couple of months, it had been exploited by what is believed to be the NSA. And then the NSA was hacked. The tools that the NSA was using to hack governments all over the world, and systems all over the world. Is that the gist of it, Draza?
I would really hope that wasn't really the story. The way that I would like to tell the story, and maybe I'm too Pollyanna-ish, but Eternal Blue was a tool that was released by the shadow brokers, and they claim to have had obtained quite a few tools from the NSA from a particular division in particular, and they put it up for auction, that they were going to auction them off, and people were very curious about what they had, if it was real, but they didn't really bid on these tools to get from them, and so the shadow brokers just said, fine, we're just going to release it to everybody. Then if nobody's going to buy it, we don't want to hold it to ourselves. So they just released all this stuff.
And what were the tools?
There was I think on the order of 60 different tools that were released for different activities, for exploiting all different kinds of systems.
Okay.
But the eternal blue one is the one that
All right, stay with us, Draza. We're going to a hard break here. Just 1 second. You're listening to Non-Compliant America. Joshua Michael will be right back.
Broadcasting from the former state of Oregon in FEMA Region 10, it's your host, Joshua Michael.
All right, welcome back, folks. We are second segment in, talking to Draza Smith. We're going into kind of some of the back-end backstory with what happened with Microsoft and some type of hack that they had or something like that. Could we pick back up on that?
So we've had a lot of interest by nefarious actors that look for these vulnerabilities in what we call the industrial control system realm, and a lot of these ransomwares, a lot of the tools that have been released have been utilized to develop systems that can now attack some of our industrial systems that are now controlled by computers, PLCs, etc. Eternal Blue caused issues with, I could be mistaken here, but I think that was still the underpinning for the ransomware that hit the Colonial Pipeline. And not related to Eternal Blue, but a Step 7 vulnerability that was in the Stuxnet. The Stuxnet was terrible because that came out and it affected power plants. It just went crazy. It showed us how interconnected all the power plants were, and many engineers spent many hours not sleeping and fixing their systems, making sure that everything was patched with that after it was discovered destroying some of the centrifuges in Iran.
Okay. So that's, yeah. So a lot of the industrial development is it all tied in with, a lot of the manufacturing? Is it down to a manufacturing level? We know a lot of the chipsets, things are coming from overseas in different countries. Since COVID, a lot of the parallel construction has been moved and shifted from the traditional path just because of some of the shutdowns and different things like that. So we're finding a lot of different chipsets and issues with some electronics that have endured over the past couple of years because they've moved and shifted things so much. I mean, just as far as the vulnerability goes of people in the power grid and the infrastructure, I know we're talking about the voting systems too. I mean, where do we go with, what's the message, that we should know as far as, what is this? How does this affect people's lives? How does it affect the daily lives of people?
Well, everyone should really be aware of, where their chips come from and everything, because there is a problem with not having a domestic source for a lot of the controller chips and bonus features and bonus chips that do communications that the user is not aware of.
Machines like the ones used in our election systems might be possibly be an example.
Okay. So yeah, our election system's 100% rigged. It's 100% dysfunctional. What do we need to do? Propose bills to get rid of all voting systems, all election systems? Is that kind of the premise of technology in these voting systems? Is anything is hackable?
Well,
everything's got modems in it.
It is, but I tell you what, after I've looked at the election systems in the whole, I think that we should go back to it being more community based anyway. I think that we should take the money that's spent on machines and give it to the local precincts.
Preach it, sister.
buy dinner for everybody in that community from a local restaurant instead of paying for machines to count the votes, and have everybody come and vote, visit with their neighbors, talk about who they're electing, and count the votes for their precinct and send it on up.
Voter ID at the precinct level.
Yep.
Well,
Such a better use of the money.
And I think we should have a national holiday of Election Day.
Yeah.
Right? And we should make it a federal holiday. If they want to make Juneteenth a holiday, I think they should make a national election holiday as well. And that would, I think, clean up a lot. I agree. But kind of in a bigger view, what kind of things have you been working on? What kind of things have you been seeing as far as the progression, of cyber threats? Do you think we're at a plateau? Do you think it's going to continue? I personally believe that they're increasing the cyber threats and increasing the vulnerabilities on purpose, an overall consensus of the bigger corporations that run things and things like that. They want to create these vulnerabilities. They want to create these hacks. They want to create that because I think we're ultimately leading to a goal of the global ID system, the real ID. We see it. All the states in the country have to have real ID by 2025, and it runs right in tandem with the CBDC integration and kind of that constructing. They're creating a broken system so then they can become the saviors, and these new systems can become the saviors. And in other words, give us your blood, give us your face scan, give us your, your voice print. Photoshop's got something called voice print. They're able to replicate that. We've seen that with a lot of the AI replications of, Drake doing a song. Somebody made a song, sounded like Drake, produced it out there. So with all that technology, do you think that there is an end goal to, move everybody into that system? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think you're talking about two very distinctive groups of people that may have some synergy, but I don't even think it's intentional. From what I see from a cyber perspective, I see there's a lot of money to be made there. So we see people that are now developing toolkits for industrial control system that are just like a Swiss Army knife, where you can just use this piece and hack into a system, which lowers the level of technical expertise of the attacker. If you've got a toolkit available for industrial control system, like what we saw on a network level when Metasploit came out as a toolkit for penetration testers, but then was exploited by people that use it as a script kiddie hacking box. So there's an awful lot of money to be made for there by hacking into systems, by terrorizing, the companies and everything. And then you've got another group that may be looking for those political machinations that just see it as an opportunity to show why there's more governmental control needed. But I don't think that the motivations of the two groups are necessarily the same.
That's a good point. We'll be right back talking to Draza. We'll be right back.
It's your host, Joshua Michael.
All right, welcome back, folks. Third segment. So we're trying to express to you and get down to the meat and the bones of some very complicated stuff, embedded with technology and cybersecurity and all this stuff that most people don't understand, right? Most people don't understand, even what an IP address is. Nobody knows what an IP address is. Most people don't. Everybody thinks that the internet is Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi is not the internet. It's a communication system, between one device to another. It's wireless, right? So what we're trying to do is just explain to people kind of the vulnerabilities going on with our power grid and the industrial system and the whole combine that's behind it. That's a whole enterprise level of cybersecurity people and cyber threat and hackers. And there's just a whole group of people that are literally spending days and days and days on end developing systems. And now we got a special guest here, Draza Smith from Florida, who is an electrical engineer. She's very familiar with cybersecurity, things like that, talking about how they are now developing systems that basically it's like a program like Photoshop that you buy, and you're able to buy, and these hackers that maybe are less experienced hackers, they're able to buy these things, and it's like a Swiss Army knife because they're able to get into systems and industrial systems very easily versus before it used to be maybe a little harder. But now they're developing these programs and these toolkits and things like that. Is that kind of along the lines of where you were getting at?
It is, except that you can buy them for free.
There you go.
It's even worse.
Yeah. And so what kind of things have you seen or experienced that are associated with this particular tool or tools like it? What kind of things have you seen out in the field, dealing with these cyber threats?
So the big thing about some of these kits is the most popular one, I guess, is called Metasploit. I mentioned it before, but maybe people aren't familiar with that. What that is it's a library of basically the hacks that people find. People package those up and put them into this Metasploit so that people that want to test their systems to make sure that they have been patched appropriately against this particular hack or this particular hack have a way to do that without knowing how to craft that particular thing themselves. They just pull it out of the library and attack their own system with it. But you can see how this would now be able to be twisted into somebody saying, oh, now I'm going to go see if Josh has patched his machine with this one. Oh, he hasn't. Look, I've got a canned hack that I can go and, see what I can see on his machine. And now they've got something called Pipe Dream that is a similar sort of thing, again, for free, if you can find it, that is for industrial control systems. So the thing that also makes me a little bit crazy is I see all these reports that come out from the government agencies, and they actually are very good. They tell everybody that if you've got this kind of equipment or this kind of equipment, then you need to go and patch them, like the CISA reports and whatnot. But the funny part that I think is that they always do attributions. Where did this come from? And it's always an attribution to China or Russia or something like that. And,
never the NSA. No, couldn't be them.
But I think we have some brilliant minds here in the United States, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's three guys in Texas that come up with something that's really brilliant, but they don't put that on.
Have you heard of the Equation Group?
That was the group that was attacked or that was infiltrated supposedly by the shadow brokers, where all those came out of.
Right, exactly.
At the
and
NSA,
they classified things as APTs, advanced persistent threats.
Yeah.
So that's what they considered a lot of these tools were these advanced persistent threats.
Yeah, persistence is a big thing in cybersecurity, because what persistence means is that if you get something on a machine, then the person that has it is kind of stuck unless they can actually figure out how to remove it. I mean, like that they really know what it is and how to remove it. If you reboot the machine, it boots up on its own. It integrates itself into another file so that when you launch the file that you want to launch, you're actually launching the bad guy's file at the same time. They don't need to, So a lot of these things are, yeah.
And I was just wondering, and not that I would know much about it, but I just keep thinking about our election systems and how something like that might create havoc on the system. But anyway, what do I know? One of the interesting things about all of this stuff is how it's important for a lot of people to understand how this affects everyday life. And I know that you and I spoke before about some of the specific threats that affected your life. We don't have to get into those and rehash those. But how, for example, from your position, has your life been affected by some of these threats that were out there? I'm sure you've had to defend against them.
I've had to do some repair work for some things and develop some new protections for systems. and a lot of it stems sometimes from people not having awareness that if someone takes and plugs their iPhone to charge inside of an industrial control system computer that's being used to run something, even though or an election system or a government database like the driver's license or tax records or anything else, if you plug your phone in to charge it thinking that nothing's there, your phone now has that cellular connection, which is an independent parallel connection to the internet, which now opens up that system to whatever is already on your phone and bypasses all the security that people put in place on those systems. So you can really do some bad things if people don't have full awareness of what their own actions are doing. I think I read that the Colonial Pipeline shutdown that was so traumatic to people on the East Coast originated by accessing an employee's password, not necessarily by brute force hacking, and then that led to the ransomware spreading through the entire system.
Yeah, I was watching a presentation on one of the organizations, I would say, in Eastern Europe, one of these enterprise organization hacker groups, how they worked on a guy at a nuclear facility in Iran for about 4 months. And the way that they got to him was through one of the main engineers. They contacted him as a fake profile on Facebook and befriended him, and were talking and having conversations with him for 4 months until the gal that was proposing as a photography hobby lady, they were able to send him a file that she wanted him to review, and he opened it up on his work computer, and then boom, they got in. So it's so transparent as far as how many different doorways we have in our life.
That is called social engineering, and that is an entire discipline of cybersecurity that sometimes the human is the weakest link. I had a friend that went and did penetration testing at a police office to check and make sure that their systems were secure, and he just walked around with his visitor badge and told people he was the IT guy there and asked people for their passwords, and the people that were working in the police office just gave him, and he's like, well, we have a problem with the security. It has nothing to do with your electronic.
Well, as well as how often you change your password, right? That's I think a good fundamental thing that everybody could do is changing their passwords, not making the same password for everything. I know it gets complicated, but also one thing that I see, because I'm in minor IT, I don't do anything what you do, but everybody writes their password down on a piece of paper right next to their computer, and it's right in their desk. And every password for every account and everything that they own, their entire Bible for their or internet existence is on a piece of paper right next to their computer.
Yeah. Draza, you were talking about the person can be the weakest link is what we're kind of talking about here. And I always, with my software companies, I said there's 3 types of problems that we run into. There's software problems, there's hardware problems, and then there's fleshware problems. And more often it was the fleshware.
And not intentionally.
No, by no means, right? I mean, and it doesn't necessarily mean the person who, as you're giving the example about plugging a phone in, that person had no intention of causing any harm. They just innocently charged my phone. They don't know that some bad actor has already, sabotaged their phone and compromised their phone. Thank you.
Pretty much assume that anything you have that's electronic, somebody else has access to it. I mean, that's just a safe way to live your life these days.
And that's an example as to why these types of conversations are important, to get people thinking and understanding that they just wouldn't know. They just take all this for granted, and learning, even again, back into whether you work for a corporation or you're an elections clerk or whatnot, to understand these things and know that these are ways so that you can protect your system. Just some of these even more innocent, simple ways without necessarily talking about, things being passed over on thumb drives or any of that stuff. Just the simple, common, everyday things that you do could be compromised.
And a lot of the engineers, a lot of the designers that want to really provide good products for people, they're having to develop systems that have enough self-awareness of the way that they should be normally operating, that rather than going from the philosophy of keeping hackers out, to build systems that have enough self-awareness of what they should be looking, what the systems themselves should be looking like, that I don't care that you're there, just don't mess with anything, or else I'll recognize that you're there, because sometimes you just can't do enough to keep people from getting out of the system, getting into the system.
We gotta jump
making
to a
all of this money. Yeah, I know it's rude to be bragging. They never catching us lacking. Me and my buddy, we working hard for this money.
All right, welcome back, folks. Last segment here with Don Powers and Draza Smith, technology expert, cybersecurity expert. We're talking about all different types of things. So, Draza, before we cut you off, apologize for the hard break. There's just a lot of information to unpack. In this last segment here, what would you like to sum up for everybody listening here today? What kind of things need to be said? Do you have a message to the world, a beacon to the world? What would you say to them in regards to your expertise?
I would really love if we could make it more tangible for people to understand how the data flows in the systems and what happens when you connect this device, for people to have a better understanding of how the circuits go together, so that when they're confronted with things like they hear about Experian getting hacked, right? And they can hear that Experian got hacked, and now what does Experian have? Experian has all of your credit information, which is linked to your social security number, which is linked to your name and your address and everything to go and get an ID or a credit card in your name. All of these things that when you hear these things in the news that take place, that you really understand what was the motivation for the people to do this, and how can this data, why was that data valuable? How can that data now be used to affect the lives of the people, so people can be more aware and take better action and not be caught off guard?
Yeah, well, and speaking of that, I don't know if you knew this, but the Experian lawsuit finally got settled earlier this year, and the bank that was the Experian bank that covered the settlement, guess which bank it was? It was the Silicon Valley Bank.
Oh my!
And the checks were sent out a week before the bank crashed. So we could go into conspiracies and anything else, but the bank that was issued for the $11.58, because I was a part of that, or whatever it was a Silicon Valley Bank. So essentially everybody that got paid out, everybody that benefited from that hack, from that lawsuit that was endured from that, nobody got to cash their checks virtually, because it was all tied in with the Silicon Valley Bank. But one thing I kind of want to get into in regards to you're talking about being situationally aware, being aware with all your electronics and all the interconnectivity, it's challenging with the general public, and this is the part that I think is the most challenging in dealing with the general public, is the mistake for convenience versus security, right? Because everything that's so convenient in the world, in elements of our everyday lives, is the most vulnerable, right? Because it's interconnected, and for the sacrifice that people, and this comes down to selfishness and just people being situationally aware and willing to sacrifice convenience for the name of security. For example, if you run a nice VPN on your computer, which a VPN basically helps protect you in certain elements of when you're surfing the internet, it takes longer to get to a website. And it's microseconds, right? It's nanoseconds. It takes nanoseconds longer to get to this website. Well, some people, they're like, that takes too long, right? Because we become so incumbent to convenience. We want, everything to happen now. If we wait in line for more than 30 seconds at a drive-through, we're just up in arms, right? So what do? We result to contactless transactions where we put the phone on our app or the app on our phone to where we don't need to pull out our wallets. We don't need to pull out our credit cards. Boom. Yeah. You have all our information. Here it is right there. Just scan it. Right. So we're just these walking, talking RF transmitters. Some people more so than others now, thanks to Anthony Fauci. But what do you say for that? I mean, because that's really what it comes down to. How do we get through to people to demonstrate the vulnerabilities that they have in their life? In the name of convenience, yes, it's less convenient. Yes, you can have a Google Nest camera in your house, but we've seen the videos of the hacker that got into the camera who was talking to the baby in the crib, through the Google Nest camera that the parents put in the thing, and we're using that as a baby monitor, right? I don't know if you've seen that video, but this guy's sitting there talking to people, and then you can see it everywhere. People hack these cameras all the time, and they talk to people, right? So you're putting a camera in your house. There's somebody watching you, and so. But in the name of the convenience, because you're using such a big system and it's convenient and it's efficient, it works, it's consistent, right? So all the names of these conveniences that people are using and putting around their lives, these Amazon Alexas. For example, Amazon Alexa, I think it was in Kentucky or Kansas, a judge subpoenaed an Amazon Alexa recording because it's always recording. They subpoenaed Amazon for a murder that took place inside that house. And they applied it to court because it was recording, and they knew it was recording, right? So things are listening all the way around us, right? Are there tools? Are there things that people can do? And I don't know if you are familiar with smart meters. Do you know much about smart meters on the side of houses?
I do.
Okay. So you obviously know that they're transmitting. They're migrating to the RF transmission. There's interaction and smart device connectivity within your house that they're doing. How do we protect ourselves, the layman's that don't understand all of these things? What kind of things can people do to protect themselves and further protect themselves from these threats?
The best thing is to be aware, understand what's actually being done, and then if you can opt out of things that you don't feel are of value to you. I heard just recently a story about someone that Alexa decided to lock them out of their house because they didn't agree with something that they were doing.
Yeah.
These sort of things just are absolutely ridiculous for you to not be fully aware of. Again, where's the data going? Is your data leaving your home? I heard another story about an area that people had opted into having their air conditioners be remotely controlled by the power companies for a reduction in their power bill. And then when a heat wave came by, everybody's air conditioning they couldn't even lower their air condition to below 80, even if it was allowed to run. Having full understanding of the implications for everything that you agree to. Every time you sign those agreements that you're agreeing to be involved in something, and that you understand where the data is going and how it will physically affect you before you check that box and move on.
Yeah, I think that's a key right there, is looking forward, and you say to yourself, okay, how could this be used? You think, oh, that's okay, they have that information, but wait a minute, that also means they have that control. And you have to ask yourself, do you really want to give control of that aspect of your life over to anyone else? And the question is not only who it's going to, but how is it going to be used? I've got two examples right now. As you know, within our election systems, a lot of states use this ERIC system, right? They use ERIC. Well, in Oregon, we have motor voter, and the ERIC system interacts with our motor voter system, and our motor voter system was just hacked. And every single registered driver from our DMV system, all that information has now been hacked. It's somebody's got it all, and there's
going to be a spike in voting next year. Basically, is what Don's trying to say. is that we're going to have the most votes ever that the state has ever endured, 10 times over what the actual population is. That's basically what you're trying to say, right?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much, yep. Everybody's going to,
that won't surprise me at all. And that's a brilliant thing that you just did, right? So you saw that the
DMV
driver's license database was hacked, and you understood how that data could be utilized somewhere else. What was the motivation for somebody having that, so that the population can become aware, and then be proactive. Start thinking about, well, what can change as a result of that before it becomes, cleanup.
Absolutely.
When you say, yeah, I knew it was going to happen. Well, why aren't our brilliant minds doing something about it?
Absolutely.
Well, that's another question for another day.
Yeah.
Love you.
Draza Smith, thank you very much for coming on. You're listening to Non-Compliant America, and have a great week.